All right, guys, so we've been through tons of the different scenarios and variables that actually make a good composition. We know our foundations, we know when to break the rules and kind of frame up our own creative types of photographs. But I wanted to talk about like next level compositions and things you can do to really take your photography to the next level using what we now know in compositions. The number one way of doing this is being able to visualize the shot before you print it out or before you put it online, anything like that. Because when you're able to visualize it, you're able to see three-dimensional objects, the things happening all around you in a two-dimensional space, which is a screen or a print. So use your knowledge of what you do know about the scene to your advantage. I mean, we can think about this when we're thinking about using a telephoto lens versus a wide-angle lens, because we know that in a 3D space, having things on the edges really stretched out to the sides of us is going to give us opportunity to stretch that and warp that within our foregrounds, within the edges of our frame using a wide-angle lens. So on the same end of that, we know that when we're using a wide-angle lens, it distorts that distance behind things. So we want to compress those distances with a telephoto lens if we're photographing something like a big epic mountain scene. We don't want them looking really small in the background. We want them predominantly placed and featured within our photograph. So using our knowledge of the three-dimensional space around us and implementing that into what the lens allows us to do, transferring that 3D space onto a 2D subject, which again is your screen or print, is very helpful to you in your composition and helps you visualize what that's going to look like. And in another session, I mentioned natural windows. And I think that's one of the big takeaways here from composition, is being able to see different compositions and different tools you can use within the outdoors, like natural windows, like shooting through a row of trees towards a waterfall. You can definitely do that. Like shooting through some shrubs on the side of an elk, bugling during the elk rut with a sunset mountain behind it. The opportunities here are endless for this when you start thinking creatively about what you can shoot through and past, and using that knowledge of your lens selection to get that shot dialed down just right. Now, the last advanced compositional trick that you can use is using zigzag patterns as leading lines that take you through the different segments of the image, the foreground, the midground, the background, zigzag lines that trace where your audience should be looking within the frame. So these can be very abstract things like just the edges of water or where the cascade is falling over a waterfall. These can be harder edges like rocks and zigzag patterns within your foreground, and framing those up as leading lines, but also watching what they do within the midground and the background. Because when you take a leading line and a foreground element within your composition and you have it just stop right at that edge, yeah, it's a cool feature to incorporate. But when you're able to zigzag that viewpoint throughout the frame and throughout the foreground is really helpful too. It can also go in a circular motion where you take your viewer from the bottom left side of the image up the right side to the top and then back down, and having a cyclical pattern where they can watch and explore. So watching your features within your composition, within your foreground, midground, and background is gonna take your compositions to the next level. It's incorporating what we already know with the compositional basics and taking them a step further, saying, okay, I know the basics of this, I know where these things should go. How do I advance them into the rest of the image? How do I work with the composition here to advance those scenarios to the next level? In this session, I want to take what we've been doing in the previous sessions and apply it to post-processing. You know, in other sessions, we've really been focusing hard on how do you go out into the field and create a really high quality composition that's balanced, that helps you elaborate on your creative style as an outdoor photographer, but also maintains that fundamental look of using your compositions in a good, solid way. So in outdoor photography, 50% of the work is done in the field, and then 50% of the work is done in post-processing to take the file that you do produce in the field and then bring it over into your post-processing software and really work on editing that file to get it out as a highly professional looking photograph for the world to see. So, did you know you can also improve your compositions through your post-processing software? In this session, we're going to be looking at this photograph in Lightroom and using the crop tool to discover how we can actually use the crop tool to improve on our compositions. So let's go into my computer screen. Let's look at this photograph, and I'm in my develop module in Lightroom. So what I can do to bring up the crop tool is click on this icon right here, and you'll see that it brings up our rule of thirds grid. And we also have this little icon that's moving around on your screen where I can click and drag a crop and bring that across. But I want to focus on the grid aspect right here. This is really going to help us maintain that, okay, I've leveled this up in the field. I know what my horizon line is. I can adjust that a little bit and tweak it within the crop tool and get that right on. So if I hover outside here, you'll see a little double arrow show up. I can click and it'll bring up a much more intense grid that I can use to level out my horizon line on one of those lines that shows up in this grid. But I want to use the foundations that we did in the first session to create a good composition with my crop tool. And using the rule of thirds grid is a great way to do that. So I can see, okay, this subject is close to the bottom thirds line of this grid. The horizon line up top is close to the top thirds line. I have other things going on here, but it looks like we have good leading lines coming across. And this is a good way to see this image, but there are also much better ways to see it and much better ways to use the crop tool to see and fine tune our composition just like we would in any other fine tuning in post-processing. So what I can do is click the O key on my keyboard and you'll see a different grid show up. This is kind of like a slanted horizontal view of the rule of thirds grid, and it lets me see what my lines coming in from the edges are that are going to point to the center of my frame. What is that main subject matter? Where does my subject line up in this image? And I can use this definitely with these rocks coming in on the side and kind of taking you all the way up into this image. There's even more we can do. We can hit the O key again, and now we have a different grid that's showing up. This is going to be a huge one for me for this image because this line follows these rocks all the way up into the image. My subject matter should be placed close to this line, and then this offset of rocks should come up this way. I can hit the O key again even and have another grid show up. So this is kind of like a closer, more compact rule of thirds. This is kind of what I was going for in this image where we have the waterfall directly on that bottom line. We have this rock showing up on this grid line, this rock showing up on this one, and then these over here on this grid line. And it just helps us organize these together. I can hit O key again. We see our golden mean show up with that big swirl and swoop of where our subject matter should be placed. This is a different golden mean than what this composition is. If I had something up here on the top, it would be right there on the golden mean. I can hit O again. It'll give me my crop tools using different aspect ratios that I shot in, different ideas that I can have when I am cropping this down. So there are so many different things that we can do with our crop tool. Let's use our crop tool with the grid that I want to, with this one, just to fine tune that. So what I can do is just crop this down and try to get this grid line right on this waterfall. What this is going to do ultimately is not only give me a better composition, but it's also going to help me eliminate distractions from my image that might be taking away from the main subject. You know, negative space on the outside here. This is going to help me fine tune my images. So this looks pretty good. I'm going to hit done, and it just zoomed in on that a little bit and cropped that in. I can hit my crop tool again
and just kind of toggle through those again and see that it kind of just shores up this crop using the different tools. Like this one puts this waterfall into this main subject window and has the intersecting lines show up on these rocks a little bit more. So this was able to fine tune my composition and just dial it in a little bit more, and seeing that it works just better using this. Now this isn't even an edited image. This is the first step you use when you come in post-processing and you're working on your compositions, trying to fine tune what you did in the field and accentuate that and complement that using your post-processing crop tool in Lightroom and using the different crop looks. Let's look at a different photo image and see if we can do the same thing here. All right, so let's use this image kind of as our example here. We have just an amazing sunset over Great Smoky Mountains National Park. You have just, I mean, this mountain valley running down straight to the sunset and the sun star that it created and just illuminated the valley deep under these clouds that were low right over the mountains. So we can use the crop tool again to fine tune that composition here. And I have already edited this image and I've gotten the colors and the light exactly where I want it. But to complete it, what I can do here is use the crop tool. And I can just toggle through these. Like here's my rule of thirds grid. Looks like the sun is pretty much right on that thirds line right here. I have different light features coming off. The horizon line right under that sun is on that bottom thirds line. So the composition here does line up well with the rule of thirds grid that we have. Let's toggle through some more of these. So we have lines coming through here. You know, this mountain valley line is pretty much directly on some of this. The sun is close to the center intersecting lines here, so I'm okay with that. I can hit O again. And this is kind of, again, the one that I want to look at a little bit closer. I also want to look at the golden mean a little bit closer with this image. So finding the right grid within Lightroom is going to help you see your composition a little bit better. It doesn't have to be the same one every single time, but for this one, we have this ridge line that's illuminated, you know, right close to this line. We have this mountain coming up that's close to this one. And then we have these illuminated patterns that run down that are right along this line. So we have another good composition showing up here with the features following the lines that we have within the landscape. I can hit my O key again and continue to run through these. This one doesn't really fit too well with this image, but again, like I said, you just find the right tool and the right crop grid for you whenever you're toggling through these to see. This is really the one that I wanted to look at closely, along with the other one that we looked at, is the golden mean. And I want this sun to really line up really well with where this spiral ends up. And it does a pretty good job here. You know, I can crop this down a little bit more and have that kind of show up right on this golden mean pattern, and just kind of fine tune that and get it right on there. That looks pretty good. I can hit done, see what that looks like, and then I can go back to the crop tool and just toggle through these and see what it looks like for the other ones as well. You know, it still maintains that look. It doesn't have to be right on the golden mean spiral. I kind of like it better, you know, a little bit outside of that. So that's where your creative vision and artistic vision comes in a little bit more. So I'm just gonna zoom back out on this image and get it back to where I had it, and just go right there. Just get it back to where it was. And I like how this looks. I mean, like I said, you don't have to get it right on that spiral, as long as it's really close there and kind of lines up with the compositional idea of that fundamental composition and where your images should be and where your subjects line up in your image. I think that's really the goal here, pairing the foundation, not getting married to that composition, but at the same time having it close to that feature and right around the idea of this is where the composition should be, and this is kind of how I line everything up within this composition. So going through these sessions that we've been through, doing the work in the field, putting in the progress of getting the right compositions that I want to from my field work, from my scouting, using what I know and lining up my compositions and features and subject matter within the frame, and then complementing that in Lightroom or any post-processing software is going to help you fine-tune that composition and really dial in the lines, the features, the subjects that are within your image, and help you just make your image and your composition just a little bit better, just that much better, to produce a little bit higher quality image in outdoor photography. So use these steps when you get into post-processing. Don't just forget about composition when you get into post-processing. Use them, complement what you did in the field, and you're going to end up with a way better photograph. I promise you that.
That concludes this class on compositions that you can use for your outdoor photography. I know using these essentials that we've gone over in this class are going to help you improve your photography overall and really help you develop your own creative style as you move forward in your outdoor photography journey. Thanks so much for watching the class. I can't wait to see you guys next time. Hey, what's up guys? David Johnston here. You know, a lot of people ask me how I got started in photography and kind of how I got to where I am right now. And I really got started a long time ago in high school when I started shooting film photography, which really taught me a lot about the technical side of the camera and also the artistic side with composition. Because with film, you have to get the shot right immediately in camera, because there's no going back to see what you shot on the back of your LCD screen. So that is what really taught me a lot about technical and artistic side of photography. But I didn't really find my place in photography until I started teaching. Teaching is something that I hold very dear. I can go out and shoot all day and get great shots and come back and enjoy those, but it's not until I see someone else see something for the very first time that I teach them, get a big smile on their face, give me a high five or something like that, that really opens my eyes to why I love photography and teaching so much. I've led workshops all over the United States, enjoyed times teaching, and you know, coming on and being able to teach people, teach a lot of people at one time is very beneficial to me and why I love photography so much.